Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it's time once again for your weekly wrap-up. It's been about a month since we've done this show, and that's because I had a whole bunch of traveling that happened in between the last one and this one. And today we're going to do a channel update to talk about everything that's coming up and also talk about all the things that went wrong on my NASA trip. Let's get to it. Now, we've done a bunch of videos since the last wrap-up, but the most recent ones I've put together include a review of the SanDisk ProBlade system. This is a new NVMe storage format that SanDisk is rolling out for the professional market. And what they do is enclose an NVMe SSD into a very rugged cartridge that can be interchanged into different readers. And their first reader is a USB Type-C one, but they're going to come up with a 4-blade Thunderbolt docking system very shortly that's pretty portable, that I think will add a lot of performance into the mix that the current USB transport does not offer. So we'll keep an eye on that product line. We also unboxed the new MacBook Air M2. This is what is driving the presentation today. So far, I'm very pleased with it, but we'll have a full review coming up soon. And I was very disappointed with the .1 ARM mini PC, which is the first mini PC powered by an ARM processor running Windows that I have looked at. But unfortunately, this is not the one to get. And you can watch my full review to hear all the reasons why, including the fact they ship it without a version of Windows that's properly activated. Now, I wanted to spend a little bit of time, though, talking about my trip to the Kennedy Space Center for the attempted launches of the Artemis 1, and I should say attempted trips down there because I went down twice already. Now, this trip would have been a disaster had it not been the fact that we got some great content while we were there, even without the rocket launching. Unfortunately, the video isn't doing very well. I'll talk about the performance in a few minutes, but if you wanted to hear from scientists, engineers, and an astronaut about everything that's been going on down there, head over to Lon.TV/Artemis1, and I'm telling you, their enthusiasm is infectious, which is why I love going down to the Space Center. Even if nobody watches, it's really kind of reinvigorating to talk to people that are doing their best work and focusing on the future of humanity. It's kind of a nice change of pace, to be honest with you. So I will keep doing this stuff, but man, this trip was really challenging. The first problem occurred when the hotel that I had booked, the International Palms Resort, rug pulled me. They get the thumbs down here. What happened was I had booked a room originally and I had booked the wrong dates at another hotel. My friends were staying here and I checked on their website and they had availability. So I went ahead and booked the room and they called me up a couple hours later to tell me there was no room to be given. Their website had a problem. And I was stuck because I needed a place to stay when I arrived and there was nothing available anywhere. But I tried something new, for me at least, which is Airbnb, and I found a great 3-bedroom house that cost less than even the hotels that were 40 or 50 miles away. And I was able to get my friends who were booked at that International Palms Resort to cancel their reservations and stay with me, and we all saved a lot of money. So a big thumbs up here to the Airbnb host that graciously took us in and made for a great traveling experience. And I will likely be doing these Airbnbs again when I go down there because there are so many that are very close to the Space Center, and all of these hotels have been jacking their rates up ridiculously whenever there's any kind of launch going on. The place that I usually stay at is this little motel that is right next to a Waffle House, which is awesome. And their rates go from like $50 a night to like $300 and change a night whenever they think there's a launch about to happen. So this is a much better deal, and you have a lot more room to spread out, and you can have other people stay with you to bring that cost down. So a big thumbs up to Airbnb. Now, with that problem out of the way, I was excited to get down to the Kennedy Space Center. I was leaving on a Saturday evening because I was a guest at Retro World Expo earlier in the day. There will be a dispatch video about that coming up. So I finished up there, and as I was getting back to my car to prepare for the airport trip, I get a text saying there's a problem at the airport. I checked the news, and a fuel truck spilled over at the Tweed New Haven Airport where I was leaving from, and they shut the airport down for about 8 or 9 hours. Now, my flight was supposed to leave at 7:30 p.m. The problem is that the planes that were coming in to take us out hadn't arrived because the airport was closed. And that's where Avelo Airlines really came in. Now, in full disclosure, they were our travel sponsor for the first trip down there. They covered our airfare. But witnessing how they handled this problem gives them a huge thumbs up, which they would get even if they hadn't sponsored the trip, because they worked really hard to not only get people who were stuck at remote airports back to New Haven, but they also worked to get us all out. They wanted to start the next day off fresh, and they really hustled. And I showed up to the airport, and the staff was running around just trying to get all the logistics in place. They had to land 3 planes and get 3 planes off the ground in the course of maybe 2 or 3 hours once the airport reopened. And one of the best things that I witnessed there was the staff dropping everything every time somebody had a question. I had a little issue with my boarding pass. I just looked for the nearest person with a vest on, and they dropped everything, went over to the computer, and resolved it immediately. It was really encouraging to see an airline actually care about customers, and that's why Avelo gets the thumbs up. The delay, of course, was not their fault. It wasn't even their fuel truck. It was from the private jet area on the other side of the airport. But because the truck spilled in the middle of the whole situation there, they had to shut the whole place down. So I didn't get into Florida until about 2 or 2:30 in the morning. It was pretty late. And that's where Hertz comes in. And they get a thumbs down because I signed up for the Hertz Gold Plus Rewards program, and I have something through my American Express card or whatever, so I expected that I would skip the counter and have a car waiting for me. So I get off the plane, I am dragging myself over to the rental car area, I go to the Hertz Gold place where I can just get in the car and go, and there's no cars. I go into the little office there, there's no people. There's one woman in the back who tells me somebody will help me in a little bit. I said, well, I'm here now and you're here. Maybe you can help me. But nope, she totally just walked back in the office and waited for somebody else to come out. Finally, when somebody did come out, I was told there are no cars. And they just left it at that. Meanwhile, this was not like a reservation that you pay for at the time you arrive. This was a reservation that I prepaid for. And I'm looking around the garage. There's cars everywhere, but there's not a car for me. So finally, after just staring at the guy for about 15 or 20 minutes and being promised a car that never showed up, he finally gave me the keys to a Volvo, and I was on my way to my Airbnb. Sadly, this is the response that I got when I filled out their survey asking how my experience was. All they do is just sincerely apologize. They don't even give you a credit or anything for taking the time to complain to them. So this is like a meaningless apology, if you ask me. Now, you can't Uber to NASA. The reason is that where you check in is about 10 or 15 miles away from where you end up. And beyond that checkpoint, everyone who drives onto the property needs to be authorized to be there. I was authorized as press, which means I can drive from that checkpoint to the press center. But you basically just roll on in to the Kennedy Space Center. And the first time I went there was like pretty crazy just to be allowed in without some kind of escort, making sure you don't take a wrong turn. But they are very strict with security there, as you might imagine, so you don't want to take any wrong turns. But that's why you can't Uber and have an unauthorized person take you in. But I got to the Airbnb at 3 o'clock in the morning or 3:30, got a couple hours sleep, and then we woke up and headed down to the Space Center for a media day they did the day before the first launch attempt. And had that flight been canceled, I would have had nothing. I would have missed this event because it ended around 11 a.m. And we got so many great interviews. They had all these interesting people just hanging around, and you can grab one and do your thing with them. It was awesome. And we interviewed, of course, Shannon Walker, and you can watch the interview with her on the video that you can find in the playlist. And it was fun talking to her and also just watching the spectacle around her because she was escorting around a group of astronaut candidates. So these folks have been basically accepted as astronauts, but they're in the earlier stages of their training. And they were not allowed to speak on the record to the media. And they were instructed to follow around the astronauts and listen to them as they were doing these interviews so they could get some initial media training. And it was really funny just to see, as I'm talking to her, a whole group of astronaut trainees standing at attention, listening behind her. It was really funny. It wasn't quite a military attention pose, but it was pretty close because some of these young men and women were military people. And they were just following her around all day as she was walking around doing different interviews and stuff. It was really fun to see that. Now, of course, when we got to the launch day, they had trouble fueling the big rocket. So we were all in the press center watching this monitor. And throughout the day, they were having trouble with the HDMI splitter that was driving all of this. I wish I had brought my splitter. I could have fixed it for them. And so every once in a while, the guy would come on with an announcement, and for whatever reason, that's when the splitter decided to act up and would shut down, and you'd hear groans all over the press center. But the big issue involved the hydrogen tank, which is the larger of the two tanks that you see on the screen there, and they just could not get the hydrogen onto this rocket without it leaking. And this was a problem that plagued the space shuttle program, and it now plagues this program because this is largely a scaled up version of the space shuttle's launch system, which consists of solid rocket boosters and main engines that are powered by liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. And they went this way because they knew they could scale it up and build it and have it ready to go earlier than anything else. But you deal with these issues, and Congress kind of insisted on this launch platform versus something new, which is why we are here now. So the second leak was the worst of the two, and that was one they couldn't rectify, and they just had to scrub on that second attempt. And unfortunately, from that second attempt, all I got for video was me doing my video intro. That was all there was. Everything else in that video was from the first visit down there. So this was a very expensive endeavor. And unfortunately, the video has not been performing well, as you can see here. And I liken this to a equivalence of eating your vegetables and not having any dessert available at the end. And I think that's what happened here. We had a lot of educational, nerdy science and engineering stuff to talk about and no launch to cap it off. So I was very disappointed with how this performed, and I'm trying to figure out if I can get back down for one of the upcoming launch events. I do have to renew my credential, which I'm going to do, and we'll see if I can get back down for the launch. Oddly, another video I did while I was down there, this was the night before the second launch attempt. I just went on live with my smartphone, and this video did double the views that the one that I spent the most time on did. So that goes to show you that the amount of effort that I put in sometimes is not rewarded by viewership, which is a bummer, but that's just how YouTube works, I guess. And I think it's also indicative of what people's interest areas are. The reason why we didn't stay on the moon after 1969 is the public lost interest in it. I think the public wants to see big progress quickly, and then when it gets more mundane, it's not as interesting. But I find it very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of you did as well. And it was great, though, to see all of these awesome comments. I think the like to view ratio was the highest on this one versus a lot of the other stuff I've done recently. And I got so many great comments about the interviews and how this whole thing came together. And I really liked the way it just worked. And unfortunately, not enough people took an interest in it to give it a click. But it wasn't a waste of a trip. I had some really great networking opportunities with other members of the media and, of course, with some of the folks that work at NASA. And I got to connect back with some friends who I hadn't seen in a while and made some new ones. We went out to dinner after the second scrub and had a great evening there, and some really interesting people come to these launches, and maybe I will interview one or two of them in the near future who I met on this trip. So stay tuned. You never know who might show up here on the channel. So what's coming up soon here? Well, I've got a bunch of stuff in the works and some things that are already done. We are going to review, of course, the MacBook M2, the MacBook Air that is, and it is right here on the desk right now doing the slideshow presentation. And we also have a paid sponsorship coming up from Synology, where we're going to be looking at some of their various backup utilities. And we're going to start with Active Backup for Business, which is a way to automatically back up Windows computers on your network. They have additional features for file shares and Linux servers and VMware servers too, but we're going to focus on the Windows part first. And what's neat about this is that you install a little client on the Windows computer, and it will just automatically and incrementally back itself up to the NAS. And it's pretty smart about how it handles files, because if you've got maybe 5 computers backing up to it, any files that those computers have in common are not duplicated on the NAS. So it's really smart about trying to keep space at a minimum while still providing all of the backup protection. And you can even burn an ISO onto a USB stick and restore an entire computer if you have a hard drive failure or some kind of malware infestation. You can basically take the best good backup, plug in a drive and bring that computer right back to where it was before the incident happened. And we'll look at how all of that works. And of course, you can get at individual files on the network. So this is going to be a fun one. I hadn't really played with this too much until we started working on this project, and I'm pretty impressed with it. We're also going to take a look at my trip to Retro World Expo. This is what I did right before I left for the NASA trip. And we got to talk with EPOS Vox and Retro RGB and the new 8-bit Heroes and their NES game maker software. Lots of cool stuff, and a look at a replica kit from Knight Rider that is totally awesome. Also on the docket is this smartphone from Unihertz that has a built-in walkie-talkie, and there are some additional features for ham radio operators out there like me, so this is a fun one for me to review. We also have a look at this Vision Tech dock. I shot this a while ago. I just haven't found the right time to slot it in just yet. This review is up on Amazon. This is probably one of the better portable USB hubs that I've looked at because it can pass through 100 watts of power, has full gigabit Ethernet, and supports dual display output if your computer supports it. So it kind of checks all the boxes, and it's useful as a portable dock, but also as a regular desktop dock too. And it's not all that expensive for the feature set it offers. I also have the Harmony cartridge that I haven't gotten to yet. We'll probably do this one as a live stream because we've been kind of looking at ways to bring modern hardware into older hardware. And this is a flash cart for the Atari 2600. And I recently, on a whim, found an AV modded 2600 console. And we're going to use that and the Harmony cartridge together and see how some of the modern hardware might work on a really old game console. And then, of course, if I'm able to, I'm going to get back down there and see that rocket launch, gosh darn it. And I'll let you know if I do end up going back down. And if I don't, I'll see if I can get somebody who is there to give us some footage of what it's like to be on site when one of these things lifts off. Now, this week's wrap-up is being brought to you by all of you, and I've got a lot of folks to thank because it's been a little while since we've had the opportunity to do so. For Super Chatters who contributed during one of my recent live streams, we have Zam, Grayson Petty, Logi KGR, CF542, David Parker, and Keith Robinson. We also have some super thankers who left a thanks on one of my videos over the last month or so. They include Olaf B., Santo Renda, Mark A., Matt Thomas Taylor, and Keith Weston. And we have some new supporters on the channel, G. Hayer and Bilingual Techie, both signed up via Floatplane, and Cybernetics Nick Picarello and M. Liko Puha contributed via the YouTube membership program. I want to thank everyone who's contributed over the last couple of weeks, everyone who's been contributing on an ongoing basis, and all of you who watch on a regular basis too, because all of those things equal channel growth. Now, if you want to support the channel, you can. You can go to Lon.TV/support and make a monthly or a one-time contribution to the channel through our donor box page. That is the best way to help because they take the least amount of fees out. But we also support the YouTube membership program, Floatplane, and Patreon. We have other channels that you can find me on, including my Extras channel, where we've got unboxings like we just did with the MacBook Air M2. And we also put some supplementary content on there every once in a while. We also have the Amazon page at Lon.TV/Amazon shop, where most of my reviews end up ad-free. If you want to engage with the channel, we've got my email list, which goes out once a week at Lon.TV/email. We also have my digest that goes out just about every day. Anytime I have a new video, I pump out an email digest, although over the last couple of weeks we were a little bit disrupted with all the traveling that I was doing. We also have a Facebook group at Lon.TV/Facebook group. The Discord and the Telegram are all still active if you want to connect with me and other viewers of the channel. And then, of course, we have my store at Lon.TV/store, and I'm getting ready to put together another stream of stuff. We've been playing around with Whatnot a bit, and I've got a bunch of stuff to give away, and I've got some things I'm going to sell, and I think I might do another one of those live Whatnot streams on the weekend. So if you want to get notified when I add things to my store, which you can find at Lon.TV/store, or when we do a Whatnot thing, you can go to Lon.TV/store alert and be notified whenever there are things available to purchase to get out of this basement. I'm getting inundated again. I did get rid of a lot of stuff, but I've got more to get rid of. So stay tuned. There will be more good deals and freebies coming up very soon. And that is going to do it for this week's weekly wrap-up. It's great to be back doing this show once again. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below, and hopefully you can all check out that NASA dispatch if you don't mind. That's going to do it for now. Until next time, this is Lon Seidman. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters. including gold level supporters Chris Allegretta, Brian Parker, Hot Sauce and Video Games, Baby Metal Fox God, Tom Albrecht, Amda Brown, Matt Zagaya, and Tech Time with Eric. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/s.